In Cyberpunk 2077, there are many different ways of inflicting serious bodily harm onto your enemies, whether you're shooting them with a smart gun that has built-in aimbot into it, or you're crushing someone's skull in super speed. But what if I couldn't do any of that? Can you beat Cyberpunk 2077 using only your fists? The rules for this challenge are, I'm not allowed to use any weapons or cyberware except for a couple that the game forced me to use. And lastly, I'm only allowed to use my human fists as my main source of dealing damage. I start off by selecting New Game and choosing the very hard difficulty because I'm the baddest motherfucker in the multiverse. I chose Nomad as my life path for no real reason and began creating my character. For this challenge run, I wanted to create someone so intimidating that their mere presence would be enough to make my enemies commit suicide. And after 15 minutes of fucking around and finding out, I created this thing. For my attributes, I dumped every point I could into body for the health and increase benefits, and the rest of the points I distributed randomly because I didn't care enough to research if there were any other useful skills in a different skill tree. There were. I spawned in and saw what seems to be the most handsome man in the universe in the mirror. My story begins like every good story, in a dark garage with a random man bending over the hood of my car. My car was apparently broken, so I proceed to do what any good mechanic would do and switch some tubes around and hope that it fixes it. And apparently that's all it takes to fix a car in 2077. The local sheriff tried to flirt with me, but I rejected his advances. Finally, out of that shady garage, I make my way over to the nearest antenna so I can contact someone who has the location of my client. And this sentence is getting way too long, I'm not finishing it. I climb up the tower, call my mom to pick me up, and I'm informed that I'm supposed to be meeting with my client at a nearby farm. I try to parkour my white ass down the tower. That didn't work. And I head off to the nearby farm to meet with my client. On the way over there, I see the sheriff visibly upset about the fact that I rejected him. I tried to make him feel better by running him over, but he didn't like that at all. I would go as far as to say he disliked it, so he proceeded to mag dump his Glock 19 into my body. Anyways, one respawn later, I made it to the farm to meet with the client. The client ended up being Jackie Wells, a well-known cyberpunk. Jackie and me are supposed to be smuggling this mystery box across the border, which surely can't go wrong at all. We arrived at the border, I get called up for further questioning, and I bribed the border control guy with a shiny Pokemon card. Either he doesn't know shit about Pokemon cards or I just gave him 40 grand. He let us leave unharmed, except for the fact that he called a hit squad to kill us. The game then puts me in my first mandatory car chase sequence where I'm forced to use a weapon to get rid of my enemies. I don't know exactly how many of these sequences there are in this game, but I do know that there's a lot, and that's too many. Luckily in this first one, I don't have to shoot a single bullet to get out of this encounter, because this is still the tutorial part of the game. You're not actually expected to do any real combat, and instead this encounter is simply for some cool action shots. Anyways, this guy kills himself, and the second guy disappears from reality, allowing me to escape without having to use my weapon once. Wanna know what priceless artifact we were smuggling? A lizard, who apparently hates high fives. The game then plays a cinematic of me and Jackie cyberpunking around Night City to try and get me, the player, to form an emotional attachment to him. I wonder why. Anyways, who cares about the whys or the whos? Because it's time for our first real mission, where we have to break into a gang hideout to rescue someone called Sandra Dorset. This is the game's introductory mission to combat, so I'm not expecting any real resistance, even if I am doing the same amount of damage as a wet napkin from a kid's birthday party. I think for a moment if I should do this the stealthy way, but like the famous saying goes, the bigger the reward, the more risk. I was very surprised at how easy it is to take down an armed psychopath using only my fists, but like the other famous saying goes, when the bear shits upstream, the bees come out to play. A common strategy you will see me utilize this run is the hit and run, where as the name implies, I hit and then I run. We eventually take out all the enemies and Shaggy hugs this guy to death, though you probably can't see it because my game is dark as fuck for some reason. I suspect it probably has something to do with the weather and lighting mods I've installed, but who cares. We find Sancho Dorset trying to sell her bathwater, ask for her autograph, stab her with this thing, and deliver her in the sweet loving arms of the US healthcare system. We head home, briefly interrupted by another car chase encounter. Fortunately for this challenge, the enemies love walls almost as much as I love cock and ball torture. As we're driving home, we see a squad of ICE agents detain a couple of US citizens. Eventually I make it home and go to sleep, and woke up the next day to meet with Jackie, who has a job for us. He tells me to meet with a well-known fixer called Black Jesus for more info on the job. Before that, however, I go to a river dock to get myself checked out, and on the way over there, I witnessed a man commit suicide. I can only guess that he saw my face from his apartment window and thought I was an angel ready to take him to heaven. Anyways, I met with the river dock, installed a couple pieces of mandatory cyberware, and he took my eyeballs because I had no money to pay him. Next I meet with Fat Fuck for the details on the job. He tells me the job is to steal an experimental biochip from Arasaka, and to make that happen, I have to obtain a piece of military hardware from a gang called Maelstrom, and meet the woman who commissioned the heist, Evelyn Parker. I decided to start by getting the flathead from Maelstrom. The Maelstrom deserve to die for many reasons, but the only one worth mentioning is the fact that they prefer chrome over flesh. I meet up with Jackie, ready to enter the gang's hideout, and we walk in through the front door. Surprisingly, the vicious gang of murderers were not exactly the most hospitable people in Night City. But I pay no mind to their weak-minded insults/threats and instead walk in to meet their leader. He tells us to sit on the couch and make ourselves comfortable, but Jackie couldn't sit due to his hemorrhoidal bleeding, and instead of taking it as a sign of respect, they took it quite the opposite. So we decided to beat the bad childhood memories out of them instead. I summoned the powers of that one kid in 3rd grade who would always shadowbox in front of your fucking face, and eventually their frail metal bodies simply gave out. After a short skirmish where my fist met someone's skull, it was time to leave the hideout. There were a couple of obstacles along the way, but nothing serious that me and my fists couldn't handle. That was a lie just now. There were actually more than a few encounters with large groups of enemies where I got finger blasted in more ways than one. Approximately 30 minutes later, I made it to the final boss fight of the level, and Jesus Christ, this boss fight is way scarier when your game is darker than, something. What the fuck is the script? My first try didn't go very well. The second one wasn't much better. But on my 3rd attempt, I figured out that if I let him shoot enough times and miss, he starts doing some weird pose in an effort to raise his power level, and during this window of opportunity, I can implant my fist into his body multiple times. And in the end, Chrome does not beat meat. We leave the hideout, Jackie spontaneously combusts, and step 1 of the heist is done. Next, I meet with Evelyn Parker to discuss the details of the heist. Before heading inside, however, I was feeling a little silly and goofy. Then I walked inside the club and meet with Evelyn, and she offers me a drink, most likely roofied, I hope, and we go to a back room to discuss the heist. The holographic stripper was a nice touch, and she tells me she has a braindance recording of the biochip's whereabouts. If you don't know what a braindance is, it's basically VR made for flogging the hog, petting the bald man, spanking the monkey, cranking it, shorking it, or as me and my homies like to call it, shaking hands with the president. Anyways, I sit on the chair, fire up the braindance, and see the world through the eyes of a whore, for a few seconds at least, because Adam Smasher proceeds to call me a beautiful woman and crush my game. I reload the game, this time surviving Atom Smasher's quick hack, have an out-of-body experience, located the biochip, and I exit the brain dance ready for the heist of the century. I called up my homie Black Jesus to let him know everything's ready for the heist, and I drive to a club called the Afterlife to meet him and Jackie over there. We arrived at the meeting, where I began my own heist of stealing everything I got my hands on. That pretty much sums up the whole meeting, and it was officially time to do the heist of all heists. Heist. One taxi ride later, we arrived at the hotel. In case I never mentioned it, the biochip is on the top floor of this place. We head up the elevator, briefly interrupted by a fit pick, and this is where the little robot thing comes into play. It goes through the ventilation system and into the security room, where it takes out the hotel netrunner by sitting on its face. Freaky. And with no security, we simply walk in and acquire baby's first biochip. As we're making our escape, everything that can't go wrong goes wrong, and we're forced to hide inside the walls as Yorinobu and Saburo have some much needed father-son time. Gone freaky. Yorinobu puts the hotel on lockdown, and this is why having no plan is always better than having a plan, because the plan always goes wrong. We drink a can of Red Bull and jump off the building, but instead of it giving us wings, all we got was a concussion and internal bleeding. The biochip gets damaged, and Jackie does the only logical thing by putting it in his own head. Considering this is one of the most fortified buildings in Night City, I tried to go with the stealth option, which lasted for about 10 seconds as I was almost instantly spotted by the next two enemies. Let's play a game. Can you guess how many times I died in this mission? If you guessed any number in the numerical system, you would have a 50-50 chance of being correct. The truth is, I don't know how many times I died, but what I do know is that this mission was incredibly easy. It was like taking candy from a baby if the baby had no legs, or head, or arms. Basically, long story short, I decimated all the enemies, we make it to the getaway vehicle, and we escape the building. And the game puts me in another mandatory car chase sequence. Fuck. Let's play another game. Can you guess if I made it through this encounter without using my weapon once? Do you have your answer? If you guessed yes, you would be correct in being wrong. I tried not shooting them, but you just die. And for the first time, but certainly not the last time, I would have to use my weapon and fail the challenge. But that's not gonna stop me from continuing the challenge, because I wanna know if it's possible to beat Atom Smasher using only my fists. Anyways, Jackie slots the biochip in my head against my will, dies, and I meet Black Jesus for some emotional support. Instead of being there for me in my time of need, he tells me that I look like shit and need to wash my face. Little does he know, there's nothing on my face. That's just how I look. I walk out the bathroom only to be betrayed by the man I love most, and he decides a good place for his bullet was in my skull. Next thing I know, I'm playing as Johnny Silverhand, famous rocker boy, drug addict, and certified bad boy terrorist. One of those was a lie. Probably. Anyways, we go to detonate a nuclear bomb inside Arasaka Tower. And once again, the game forces me to use a weapon in order to progress. At first I had hoped that the enemies would kill themselves out of respect for my pacifism, but sadly, that was not the case. This footage is 10x speed of me simply waiting and hoping that something would happen, and nothing ever did. With no way to progress, I had to fail the challenge for the second time. This mission is supposed to showcase how powerful Johnny Silverhand really was, except all the power he really had was stored inside of his weapon that I'm not allowed to use. Anyways, I planted the bomb, inflicted emotional damage, and Cyborg Man blew me up, showed me no mercy, and I wake up back in the future, ready to get my revenge on BBC. What does BBC stand for? big black car. BBC came back for me, proving that he did in fact love me like the son he never had. The reunion is cut short by a bullet, and Saburo Arasaka's former bodyguard brings me back from death, back to life, to face justice for taking a life which I never took. It's time for another car chase encounter that will probably make me fail the challenge for the third time this video. And probably to no surprise to anyone at this point, that's exactly what happened. If I don't shoot the enemies enough times in a certain amount of time, Takemura decides to whip that hoe into a passing by car. So I have to shoot them, or rather more specifically, I shot their bikes, which may or may not count towards me failing this challenge. I don't know. After shooting this first guy's bike enough times, he spontaneously combusts, moving me to the second phase of this encounter, where I now have to shoot this guy's bike enough times so that it explodes. In the last phase of this encounter, your gun doesn't actually even do any damage, meaning I can let Takemura do all the work. And by work, I mean crash the fucking car. I wake up at Victor's clinic, and it occurs to me now that I probably never explained who Victor is. And you know what? I'm not going to. He tells me that the biochip that's in my head has Johnny Silverhand's soul in it, and his consciousness is slowly starting to overwrite mine. Thanks, Jackie. The next day, I meet up with Takemura in hopes of finding a way to get rid of the biochip. And after a dragged out conversation, I learned that I have to find Evelyn Parker and Anders Hellman, the creator of the biochip. To find Anders Hellman, I needed the help of a local fixer named Rogue. I tried to speak with her, but I was promptly stopped by what I assumed to be her most loyal Tier 3 sub. I was finally able to ask Rogue for her help, and she was more than happy to give it to me for 15,000, the greedy bitch. Anyways, Rogue tells me that if I want to get Anders Hellman, I need to down a flying armored vehicle and kidnap him, which will be like taking candy from a baby, if the baby was a 6'9", 300-pound Samoan man ready to finger blast my chocolate starfish in every direction. For this job, Rogue tells me that I need to enlist the help of a fellow Nomad named Panam. On my way over to Panam, something strange happens. A paid actor, most likely sent by Arasaka, killed himself with my car to make me fail the challenge. Little does he know, I've already failed the challenge like at least twice. Anyways, I meet with Panam for her help in getting Hellman. She agrees to help me on the condition that I help get her stolen truck and merchandise back. She sets up a meet with the person who stole her truck in an abandoned little town called Rocky Ridge. The plan is to wait until nightfall, and when they arrive, we take them out by surprise. And by surprise, I mean that we turn on all the lights and kindly inform them of our presence. I tried to go for the sneaky approach, and no surprise to anyone, it fails miserably, forcing me to unleash the natural calamity that is my fists. Utilizing some of the forbidden fisting jujitsu taught to me by Shaolin monks, I had no trouble taking out all the enemies. Once all the enemies were dealt with, I gave Panam her car back, but I refused to go after the guy who stole her truck because nobody tells me what to do. Now that Panam's little revenge arc is finally over, she can finally help me take down the AV transporting Hellman. Basically, the plan is to blow up a nearby power station, and when the AV flies past it, the EMP explosion should be able to bring it down. Before we're able to blow up the power station, however, the game then decides to throw something completely new at me and put me in a mandatory car chase encounter. Like always, I tried to practice the holy art of pacifism, but it didn't go so well. So I'm once again forced to use a weapon against my will and fail the challenge for the 85th time this video. Next we crash into the power station, overload the generators, and leave just like my dad did when I was a kid. The next step is to blow up the power station, forcing the AV to land, except it doesn't land because every good plan has to fail before it can really succeed. No worries though, because mommy has a plan B, a rocket launcher. it solves all your problems, even in real life. The next time you're bullied at school, RPG. You get fired from your job, RPG. Your grandmother gives you a birthday card with no money in it, RPG. If you've played this game before, you can probably guess what's about to happen. Did you guess? It's fine, I'll tell you. It's a mandatory card chase encounter, which I tried to get out of by pretending the turret was broken and Panam got shot in the process. Even though my pacifism got Panam shot, I still wanted to see if there was a way to avoid shooting the drones, and there was not. Bye bye drones, see you in hell. We eventually make it to the crash site and find out that they're holding Mitch hostage. Who's Mitch, you ask? Doesn't matter. In fact, he matters so little that while he's being held at gunpoint, I take my sweet time messing around with the weather mod settings in order to make my game look gooder. Now that I can actually see, I utilize the classic speedrun method of b-hopping my ass to the AV and disabling its security systems. I took a couple dozen bullets in the process, but nothing that my asthma inhaler couldn't fix. And now it was time for the reckoning. I summoned the powers of the edgy cool kid who punches metal for fun. The little tin soldiers stood no chance when they came face to face with non-cybernetic, organic, all-natural meat. And if you add in my fentanyl-laced asthma inhaler in the mix, the fight really was over before it even began. I really thought the big flying drone thing was gonna be a problem, but that was until I found out that I can simply stand below it to hit it, and it simply wouldn't fly higher to, I don't know, get out of my reach. Seriously, whoever programmed this drone to fly exactly 5 feet above the ground should probably be fired. Anyways, we open up the AV expecting to find Hellman inside, but we find a Mitch instead. I sure wasn't going to risk failing the challenge for the first time just for a Mitch, so I did nothing and waited to see what would happen. That's disappointing. While Panam was crying about something, I noticed a terrible flaw in Mitch. You should probably get that checked out. Eventually Mitch leaves to probably sort out that bald spot, and me and Panam ride to a nearby gas station to find Anders Hellman. On the way over there, I hit a sick fucking flip, and we arrived at the gas station where I went to beast mode. Sure, I do little to no damage per hit, but like in all things in life, consistency is key. And as long as I consistently keep beating the shit out of my enemies, not giving them even a single second to fight back, success is all but guaranteed. I'm sure there's a life lesson in there somewhere. Probably. Anyways, after a few more hits, I find Anders Hellman. I failed the challenge because I hit him with my gun and not my fist, met Panam's extended family, and tortured Hellman for some information about the biochip. And by torture, I mean I sit in front of him, forcing him to look at my face. In the end, all he gave me was the biochip's blueprints, and I left his fate in the hands of Takemura. Next up on the to-do list was to find Evelyn Parker, and on the way over there, I learned the significance of wearing a helmet. Moving on, I arrived at Lizzie's bar to talk to Judy about Evelyn's whereabouts. She gives me a manly-looking cigarette case, and tells me to look for Evelyn in an adult bouncy castle called Clouds. I arrived at Clouds, talked to a whore, or two, talked with their king, or more specifically his computer, because I snapped his neck like a cool-looking twig I picked up. After a slight scuffle, I left Clouds to find a ripper dog named Fingers. I arrived at his clinic and knocked on his door, grabbed the mole rat by his ear, asked him a question, or two, and he tells me that Evelyn's been kidnapped by a group called the Death's Head, or something, and I examine one of their brain dances for clues to their whereabouts. We find out that they're hiding out, that rhymed, in a nearby power plant. I successfully sneak my way inside without alerting any enemies, and you should already know that I'm lying. I was shocked by Judy's inability to take out an armed psychopath twice her size, So I stepped in, only for him to ignore all my punches, just like my dad did. Eventually he had enough and turned his anger out on me instead. Round 2, I successfully succeeded in stealth. With the big guy out of the picture, it was time to start cleaning up the small fry. I did come close to dying here a couple of times, but with the help of my friend Doorway, which I hid behind every time I got low, it really was not hard at all. Now you might be asking yourself, does this challenge actually get hard at any single point? And the short answer, yes. Eventually we find Evelyn looking not so good, and I ask her about the heist, but she ignores me for some reason. Either she's got a serious attitude problem, or she's simply not hydrated enough. Whatever the case may be, the next logical step was to invade her memories. In her memories, I learned that she was working with a gang of netrunners called the Voodoo Boys, and they want their hands on the biochip. So I called a fixer going by the name of Mr. Hands for information on the Voodoo Boys' whereabouts. While Mr. Hands tries to find the Voodoo Boys, I meet up with my homie, Japanese Man. Basically, there's gonna be an Arasaka parade soon, and Japanese Man wants to infiltrate it so he can speak to Hanako Arasaka. During the parade, my job is to take out 3 different snipers and a netrunner. And as expected for a gamer of my standing, this task was almost as easy as crashing into a minivan transporting a family of 4, blaming it all on them, suing them, and getting all of their money. Anyways, I shut off the netrunner's Wi-Fi, and I'm interrupted by Oda, the super cyber ninja from Arasaka. This was the first time that I truly felt fear during this run. And that's because Oda is what you'd call a bitch. Every time I got close, he would dismember me in seconds with his sick-ass blades. On my second attempt, I did hit him with a combo that would scar the lesser man. But Oda is no lesser man, and when it came to a battle between my fists and cybernetic blades, I would lose. It's starting to look like for the first time this run, I would have to lower the difficulty. In case I forgot to mention, he also has a fully automatic aimbot submachine gun, and when he whips that hoe out, your entire HP bar is gone in seconds. However, after a few more game overs, I finally found his weakness. If you avoid his attacks for long enough, he goes invisible and stands still to heal his HP. During this time, I'm able to beat him like a sick puppy, and he will simply stand there and do nothing about it. I repeated this process until eventually his vital organs started to fail from the thousands of punches he endured. May you rest in peace, Cyber Ninja Man. Now that the easy part was over, it was time to hack the cameras and disable the security systems, allowing Takemura to walk in. The big Taki doesn't play around and instead shoots her, so we have to escape the parade. After that shit show, we meet up with Takemura and speak with Hanako about her car's extended warranty. Since no one is probably watching the video at this point, I'm not going to go in depth as to how this encounter played out. But long story short, Arasaka crashed the party and I ran away like a little bitch. We escape to a motel in the middle of nowhere and speak to Hanako Arasaka, who is finally willing to play ball. She agrees to help me get rid of the biochip, but on the condition that I use my hands to rid of her brother Yorinobu as CEO of Arasaka. Speaking of hands, Mr. Hands finally calls me and tells me that the Voodoo Boys have a job, and if I do the job, they'll let me meet their leader. I accept their offer and make my way to the swollen appendix of Night City called Pacifica. On the way over there, I crash a funeral, where this guy tried to sexually assault me, but unfortunately, he was just the Voodoo Boy contact who sent me to talk to this big hunk of a man. The big man tells me that my job is to infiltrate a hideout full of steroid-abusing goons, and once I'm in there, I need to hack their mainframe and upload the data to his OneDrive. Instead of storming the mall head-on, I decided to go with the sneaky approach. Well, if sneaky meant the opposite of sneaky. I absolutely decimated the first opponents I saw, Until this guy decides to do my challenge better than me. What are they feeding kids these days? I made it past the first enemies and tried to brute force my way through the mall, but it became pretty clear that was not possible. Thing is, mommy didn't raise no bitch and stealth is for pussies, so I got my ass finger blasted trying to brute force my way through again. So I gave up and resorted to stealth, which is not for pussies, and eventually I made it to their mainframe and began uploading the data. While I'm browsing through their search history, a Netwatch agent cuts me off from the mainframe remotely, so I have to go hunt him down. Before I can claim his soul, however, I have to face off against my greatest foe yet. That was a lie. Matilda K. Rose, otherwise known as Sasquatch, can be described in 3 different words: thick, handsome, and slow. Don't get me wrong, when she hits you, she hits like a goddamn truck, so even one mistake can be lethal. Also, she's quite the girthy woman, which directly translates to her massive HP pool. But even an elephant would eventually die after 1,000 hits. I finished the job, she started cyberpunking, and I found my target. I physically overpower him and invade his skull with my hand wire thing. After I'm finished uploading the data to Big Man's OneDrive, he uploads a zip bomb into my brain. I was denied entry in heaven, and hell didn't want me, so I came back to life and had a conversation with the big man. I finally met Brigitte, who agrees to help me get rid of the biochip. I did the ice bucket challenge, and entered cyberspace, for reasons unknown to me, and I'm once again playing as famous cyberpunk Johnny Silverhand. I met my biggest fan, and accidentally failed a challenge for the 95th time this video. Died for a 3rd time, got resurrected, again, and asked Rogue to help me storm Arasaka Tower. Arasaka Tower came to us instead, and like my World War II veteran grandfather used to say, it's time to beat up some Japanese. The game was feeling charitable and decided to give me 2 human meat shields for this encounter. But I'm a renegade, so I decide that I don't need their help, which didn't go so very good well. I resorted to my usual hit and run methods, but it apparently seems like one of my allies must have been on Arasaka's payroll the way he's body blocking my ass. Soon I had a revelation that I could probably just run past all the enemies and escape the building. I was completely wrong. I could run past all the enemies on the top floor, but I would still have to face an overwhelming amount of enemies on the lower one. While I was shadowboxing this guy to death, I noticed that all the enemies seemed to be focused on one spot. And that's when I realized one of my allies was capable of taking all the aggro on himself, and he was also seemingly immortal, which really made this encounter a walk in the park. We make it outside and I realize that I haven't been put in a car chase encounter in a long time. Fuck. I'm gonna let you figure out whether or not I failed the challenge again. Now that we escaped Arasaka with the gang, it was time to storm the tower and finish the fight. Just like the last encounter against Arasaka, it was a lot of hitting and then running away behind my human meat shields. I died once, maybe twice. But eventually I cleaned up the corpo scum just in time to fail the challenge for the 2nd time this video. She died. I probably haven't explained who she is, but if you're still watching the video up to this point, you probably already know who she is. I wish this guy a Merry Christmas, at least twice. And I'm back in the real world where Brigitte reveals she never had any intention of helping me get rid of the biochip. I decided to wish her a Merry Christmas and ran like hell out of the Voodoo Boys hideout. Fortunately, the game doesn't let you leave before killing the big guy. So that's exactly what I did. In case you were wondering, this fight was really easy because he's programmed to miss if you move left and right while hugging him. And eventually his soul decided to leave his mortal body and go straight down to hell. With all the pieces in place, it was finally time to meet with Hanako and begin the end. I decided to go with the sell your soul ending because my character has no soul to sell, and met up with genius billionaire playboy philanthropist Anders Hellman. We ride out to Hanako's mansion, where she's being held hostage, and in order to get her out of there, I had to take out all of the elite Arasaka soldiers guarding the mansion. And you can trust me when I say, this mission was not fun at all. In fact, I would go as far and say getting touched by your drunk uncle on Christmas Eve is more fun than this mission. There is no definition of the word fun that applies to this fucking mission. Anyways, after a few of the most fun hours of my life, me and Hanako leave for Arasaka HQ, where politics turned into an average American neighborhood, and there was only one thing on my mind: Atom Smasher. Everything else came second, so I speedran my way through countless enemies to face off against Mr. Cyberpunk himself. And it was time for the most cinematic fight of Cyberpunk history. The so-called boogeyman of Night City was reduced to nothing but a broken microwave. In case you didn't realize, I did not beat him with only my fists, and there's a good reason for that. And the reason is that he takes little to no damage when you hit him with your fists, and on my first try when I got him down to 40% HP, he unleashed a quick hack on me, reducing my game textures to nothing and my frames to 9. And since I had already failed the challenge, I decided for time's sake, on my next try, I would equip some shitty little green stick I found and beat him with that instead. After defeating Cyborg Man, I was off to confront Yorinobu. I don't know if this was a bug or something, but for some reason, he was wearing a goddamn shower curtain. Anyways, Hanako shows up, takes Yorinobu away, and I officially did not beat Cyberpunk 2077 using only my fists.